Hello and welcome back to another season of Teaching General Conference. This is where we put short videos on YouTube and online on our podcast feed to hopefully help teachers around the world be better prepared to teach from a specific General Conference talk. In this season, we're obviously focusing on October 2025 General Conference, and this is the first episode of many. So be sure that you are subscribed to this podcast feed or this YouTube channel. Give it a thumbs up while you're at it. And that way you are going to get you'll be alerted at the other videos that we have released, that we will release to help you teach specific talks from the October 2025 General Conference. And we're going to have a variety of different presenters. You'll probably see maybe my face more often than not, but we'd love to share different perspectives of teaching. And it's not so much about learning how to teach the specific talk, but also just how to teach in general. You'll pick up tips and tricks that will hopefully help you teach any general conference talk or any topic whatsoever in the traditional format of being a Latter-day Saint and attending church and Sunday school class and Elders Quorum Relief Society, second hour, those types of things. So welcome to a new season for sure. For definitely a unique general conference, which was presided over by the Quorum of the 12 Apostles rather than a first presidency. The buzzword of the conference was apostolic interregnum, right? And definitely an interesting one for the history book. So I'm actually recording this. I typically show the church website, gospel library, when they, the gospel library format of the conference talk. But I'm recording this literally the day after General Conference because I want to start getting these out there to help you as soon as possible as you're preparing for teaching General Conference in your respective Elders Quorums or Relief Societies. So we are going to start with President Oakes's talk called The Family-Centered Gospel of Jesus Christ. This was the last talk in the October 2025 General Conference, and it was phenomenal. It was great, very insightful. And like President Oakes said, this was a talk that he wrote prior to the death of President Nelson, though he said a little bit about temple announcements at the beginning. It's definitely a standalone talk that he definitely could have given just as the first counselor in the first presidency as well. So let's jump into this lesson or this preparation, and maybe there'll be some ideas. Now, as I go through this, as I've shared before in past videos, I have a few general approaches how I do this, and I'm going to share a variety of ideas, but please know that I'm not telling you these ideas with the expectation that you can fit all of these ideas into a single lesson. Maybe ones that try a few that stand out. And as you know, those 45, 50 minutes, sometimes more like 35 minutes of class time go by so fast. So, or maybe this will spur some ideas, some of your own ideas on that will help you teach as well. So one warm-up activity I have, and maybe I'll jump back to this warm-up activity. I highlighted this first part of his talk where he talks about, the announcements of temples. And this was sort of a fun part of President Nelson's time as president of the church, where he made us anticipate so much of the announcing of the temples. And maybe that won't be as consistent or as regular or as in abundance as it was in the past, but it might be a fun way to warm up the class to just ask, what are some of the memories of the 200 temple announcements in the class? People love to share when that, their mission temple was announced. Or I remember when Taylorsville, I grew up in West Valley, worked at the Reams Grocer right across the street from where the Taylorsville Temple is now. And man, I could have never imagined that there would be a temple there. And now it's there, open and functioning, and such a blessing for that community just a mile away from my boyhood home. And so I think everybody has a temple or two when they heard it announced by President Nelson that just made a memory. And so to invite them to lean into that and share it. And man, it'd be interesting to hear the different highlights that individuals in the class had when they considered the all the temples that were announced. So that's a great warm up activity. Now, as you know, this topic, this talk is focused on the family centered gospel of Jesus Christ. And so a good warm up activity might be to invite specific individuals or everybody in the class to say, hey, why don't you take your favorite family picture off the wall, especially maybe your childhood family picture, and bring it to class. Can you imagine everybody showing up with this physical object, right? And of course, you can have them pull it up on their phone if that's the easiest case. But there's something about having that photo that you can lean over and show, and it's big, and they can point at certain people, and to warm up the class, saying, "Let me just share with you the family I came from," right? Naturally, you're going to see maybe non-traditional family setups, like, oh, I noticed that your father isn't in that photo. What happened? Or, oh, you come from a divorced family, or whatever it is. These are actually my grandparents who I'm sealed to. And there's so many stories and ways to connect as an Elders Quorum Relief Society to really, really bond together by learning each other's stories. So just a simple warm-up activity there is invite everybody to bring a family photo, and that'll really get the class grounded in this topic. As I've shared in other videos, I like to go through, as I read through the talk, I highlight, I think I did it in red here, specific doctrines. Like, these are core doctrines, strong, clear doctrines that we can highlight to hopefully anchor us to something, right? It's so easy as we teach these classes to kind of go down wormholes, or talk about families, and then we're sort of talking about maybe esoteric doctrines. But it's good to try to get to the center of doctrine as possible. And so and you can base your entire lesson off of these core doctrines, right? So like this one, pivotal to God's plan. In fact, here it is. Elder Russell M. Nelson taught at BYU audience, the family is quote, pivotal to God's plan. In fact, a purpose of the plan is to exalt the family, right? All right, here I have, only through the saving ordinances of the gospel of Jesus Christ can families be exalted. We are a family church. Our doctrine and our beliefs in eternal family strengthen and bond us. The sins and inevitable shortcomings all of us experience in mortality can be forgiven through repentance because of the glorious and saving atonement of Jesus Christ. And there's probably more in there that you'll find as you go through. Those are just the ones that jumped out to me. The point being is, like, you could take that one doctrine and say, you know what, there's so much to discuss in this lesson, especially when it comes a general conference talk from a prophet. There's so much content, and we can try and get overwhelmed by trying to teach it all. And the best approach is to say, actually, I'm going to take a snippet. I'm going to take a principle. I'm going to take a doctrine and make that my focus. And if we get to these other places, great. But you'll find that discussion starts going, questions start, being shared, whatever it is, time will go by so fast. And so this is a good activity to just pinpoint what are the core doctrines, or as close to the core doctrine as we can find in a general conference talk. All right. Going through this, I also noticed, he's quoting Elder Russell M. Nelson. And so I did a quick search. It's actually this BYU speech. And this is great to actually go to in your preparation and to read this. Looks like you can listen to it. It's a 31-minute talk back in 2005, February 2005. Again, it's always nice to hear his voice again. But you may gather more insights out of that, or think of new ideas or approaches, or better understand these doctrines by hearing a different prophet articulate these things, right? So there's that speech. And again, there's a doctrinal statement. How does this statement distinguish us from other Christian religions? I think this is a really powerful approach to do this, where, growing up, I wasn't as familiar as other theologies, other Christian practices. Many of you know, you may have seen my face from time to time on the YouTube channel Hello Saints with Pastor Jeff. And I highly recommend you subscribe to that and go through some of his videos. They're quite entertaining and insightful. And some of our discussions there have helped me personally, and even our off the record discussions, to better understand how unique this doctrine of family is. Right? I mean, they believe that their relationships will be perpetuated, but not necessarily in the traditional marriage or family setup, right? He talks about him and his wife. He expects to see his wife in heaven, but they won't necessarily be married. They're more focused on the relationship with Jesus Christ. One thing I did, and this is maybe an example of how you can use AI in your lesson preparation. I went to AI and I said, here it is. I said, in give me in one sentence, in no more than one sentence, give me the summary of how uh, Christian religions view the family, right? And you can play with AI and show all sorts of stuff, but this is what it gave me, right? To me, it gave me obviously the churches, which it nails. I feel like Latter-day Saints teaches that families are central to God's plan, serving as a primary setting for spiritual growth, eternal progression, and love among God's children. Okay. And I went goes because the Catholic, the Eastern Orthodox, most Protestants, evangelicals, has the churches again, Anglicanism, Lutheran tradition, right? A simple activity is to take these, print them out, maybe give specific groups each one of these things and say, all right, you've got the Eastern Orthodox one, right? So it sees family as a spiritual unit, an icon of the church where faith is nurtured and love extends beyond the home to others, establishing the soul's path towards God. So interesting. What can you discover, understand as a group from that, right? Maybe they give summaries to the entire class, but allowing people to group up. And I know the parent share thing can be resistant at times, but the reason why so many teachers use it, it is effective as far as engaging individuals' mind, moving from a passive state to an active state in the lesson, right? We're not putting it all on the teacher to be in the active state of lecturing and teaching. You're inviting them to step in and say, what did you notice about this phrase? How is it different? What surprises you about that, right? And getting a great discussion going. Now, you might need to be a little bit careful because in the church setting, we're not looking to necessarily dunk on other religions or kind of say, yeah, this is why we're better than them. But I think it's helpful and really puts it into perspective, the uniqueness of our doctrine when it comes to the family and how paramount it is compared to other Christian faith traditions, right? And it might be cool to get some, Eastern religions or Muslim perspectives in there as well to really understand how unique our theology is and why we focus on it. That is, this is an exalting mechanism that we are saved individually, we are exalted as a family. And so again, that would launch into a great discussion there. All right, what else we got here? So right here, President Oaks says he gets into the data, right? For nearly 100 years, the proportion of household headed by married couples has declined, and so is the birth rate. I think down here as well, he gets into the data. It's really tempting, and people, love data. It's really tempting to get into it and say, let's look at the data. Like, I think generally you can assume everybody knows the traditional family practice is in decline, right? And highlighting it and focusing on it, like obviously President Oaks did so, but to set context and to for his talk. But that can be time wasted in a class where you don't necessarily have a lot of time. And so one idea that I had here is if you can actually Google or use AI and say, show me some infographics that illustrate the trends of the current family or birth rates in the United States or wherever, right? Maybe if you're in another country, I think President Oaks focus on these are United States statistics, but it'd be interesting maybe if you're in the UK to say, let's find some statistics there. And again, not necessarily inserting them into the lesson plan, but maybe putting them up on the screen as an infographic just as people walk in. It's sort of visually appealing. And they might lean into it and say, oh, I see where we're going here. And they might find interest there. It warms them up to the topic. So, But again, I would just say maybe it is tempting to get into the data, but avoid that for the sake of time, right? All right. Here's another warm-up activity. He talks about the parental influences with activities and things. You could get the class starting, or you could use this in the middle of the lesson as well. But get the class starting to chat and connect by asking them, what memories do you have related to doing hard work as a family when you were young? Right. Me personally, I remember the Saturday mornings, my dad coming in the room, waking me up, and it was obvious that I had a full day of work ahead of me in the yard or wherever it is. My wife grew up on a potato farm in eastern Idaho, right? She has memories of driving tractors, driving potato trucks, getting school off to work the harvest, right? She definitely had hard work instilled in her, and it made her a better person. Everybody, especially, um, you know, Gen Xers or millennials, they will have those stories of like, oh, you wouldn't believe what my Saturdays were like, or I remember this time when mom and dad took me, wherever, and getting people engaged that way is a great way to do that. All right, so here, obviously, man, this um, he talks about his mom, right, being a single mother. He lost his father when he was 7 years old. He even goes on to talk about down here his grandfather. Um, but and it was so sweet, right, to hear how you can still feel the sadness. Even at 93 years old, President Oaks is still just remembers that hurt, that wounding, that trauma of finding out his father died, and then also referencing his widowed mother raising them. Right, she never married again and raised those kids, and now look at the individual that all the church gets to benefit from that. It's so tempting to want to reiterate those stories, but I would strongly encourage you to insert your own story or find individuals, as I put down here, find individuals in your ward who can share how they have found strength from family bonds in non-traditional family arrangements. That's what President Oaks was doing, right? He had a non-ideal. I mean, it was obviously still beneficial. I don't mean in that way, but he had a non-traditional home that he was raised in, and he articulates how that family unit still blessed him, right? So there's so many opportunities to find different individuals, maybe in the ward, who a single mother, a single father, a widower, who can articulate how that family bond has blessed them, right? By inserting these personal stories, either from the teacher, for the class, people in the classroom, or generally people in the ward, this has the ability to unite and bond the ward when we hear each other's stories and how it has impacted us deeply. Just as you listen to President Oak share about himself weeping at the bedside, and his beautiful grandfather comes and says, I will be your father. Like, that story bonds us to him, right? But in this setting, in church, I think there's better ways to go about it to make it more personal to the people in the room. Okay. All right. Let's see. Down here with the family circle is an ideal place to demonstrate and learn eternal values. So, what are the most memorable eternal values that you learned in your family circle? I think everybody, you can think of your mother, your father, your grandparents, and it's like immediately 2 or 3 principles come to mind as far as what they taught you, right? And so, getting others in the classroom sharing that will really emphasize this principle that President Oaks is teaching, that we learn great values from these family circles, right? And then later he says, of course, many church members have beloved family members who do not embrace gospel values and expectations. Such members need our love and patience, right? This is a big thing that a lot of families are experiencing in 2025, 2026, right? And there are real stories in the room. So to ask a question like, what advice would you give other families who have a family member who doesn't embrace gospel values? These are real conditions, real circumstances. And I think people would benefit hearing, like, yeah, how do you show up for those who maybe don't want to hear about the gospel, or, but there's still that family bond, that family circle is still really beneficial to them as well. All right. Down here, he says parents also have a duty to teach their children practical knowledge apart from gospel principles. Families unite when they do meaningful things together. Family gardens build family relationships. Happy family experience strengthen family ties. Camping, sports activities, and other recreation are especially valuable to bond families. Families should organize family reunions to remember ancestors, which lead to the temple. So, good question comes out of this. What practical knowledge did you learn from your family? What practical knowledge are you attempting to teach your current family? What have you noticed about this process? So, one, this is really helpful to sort of reflect on the practical knowledge you've learned in your family, but I think especially I think I've learned this as a parent. Wow, this is a lot more difficult than than it looks like on paper, right? To teach individuals, right? I'm trying to engage my young kids in scripture study and help having them process and think about the gospel. But sometimes they look at me like, "Why does this matter, Dad? Like, I'd rather do anything else right now than entertain your scripture study or your questions about the gospel, right?" And so I think this is going to be a real conversation amongst the group is like, wow, this is really difficult. And actually, I found these three things that I've learned that have helped me. What have you found? Right. Really powerful discussion there. Um, Down here, he talks about some may say, but we have no time for any of that. To find time to what is truly worthwhile, many parents will find that they can turn their family on if they are all turn their technologies off. Um, I love this next line. And parents remember that what those children really want for dinner is time with you, right? It'd be interesting to explore what families are doing during dinner time, right? Or how they handle um, technology in their home. There's a great resource that's actually developed by a member of the church that I recommend. This is Andrea Davis. I've interviewed her over at Leading Saints a couple times. She has a phenomenal resource just as far as better screen time, how to manage. I guess she puts it perfect here: reduce screen time, restore family connections, raise kids and teens who thrive. Um, so, really powerful resource. You could probably find some clips in here if you really wanted to mix in some multimedia into a lesson, which is a powerful strategy. Not necessarily because um, this is an all-time best teacher of this principle, but say let's watch a few of these clips, right? And what do you notice about it? You're engaging the minds of the class when you shift to different media, um, different multimedia, right? Rather than you just standing or them just talking with people. Oh, now we're watching a video, right? So engages the mind differently there. All right, I think that is all I have, but a phenomenal talk as president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Probably next conference, he won't be speaking as president of the Quorum of the 12. He'll be speaking as president of the church and the first presidency. And so a unique conference for sure. But I just love so much this talk, both because of its spiritual insight, but also practical application, right? Like it really engages my mind. Say, yeah, what can I do to engage my family or create a circle based on values and teaching practical knowledge and the doctrines of our church, which are so beautiful, of exalting the family together and that our relationships are eternal and temples and all the things. So I would love to hear what ideas that you use or ideas that come to mind that how you would approach this lesson. Go to the comment section and definitely share there. But again, subscribe to this channel on YouTube and to the podcast feed as well. Teaching General Conference. There's going to be many more of these videos to come that will help you prepare to teach General Conference in the next 6 months until we gather again in April and get a whole another batch of fantastic prophetic direction and doctrine. So thanks for watching and good luck in teaching General Conference.